If you're an attorney and you are looking at intake, your consult calendar, and your sign retainer count with a little bit of anxiety, I'm glad you're here. Attorneys definitely do not lose sleep over impressions. They definitely lose sleep over conflict check delays, consults that just don't convert, and a month that feels sort of busy, but it's light on sign retainers. You know what that's like? Imagine a vendor call that starts the same way it always starts. Report looks great. Rankings are up. Traffic is up. Cost per lead is down. And then someone says the word momentum. That's your cue to ask the only question that actually matters is, how many sign retainers did we get from all of this? And you're probably going to get a pause. It might be uncomfortable. It's then you get a proxy answer. Well, we had more calls, more form submissions, more engagement, and maybe you'll even get to see a chart that ends with the word leads. But your reality as an attorney is that the consult calendar is uneven. Your intake team is triaging a pile of bad fit leads, and you are probably starting to ask, why does my pipeline feel so thin? Here's the central problem that I see over and over again, and I talk about it in my book, is that most law firm marketing is reported as if the job is to generate activity, not to generate decisions. That gap is where money just disappears. And it's also where trust in marketing dies. So I want to give you a named concept that makes this easier to see it in your own firm. It's called the retainer gap. And the retainer gap is the distance between marketing source interest and assigned retainer. And it shows up as a feeling first, long before it's ever going to show up in a spreadsheet. And the reason that this is so common is structural. Marketing vendors can measure what platforms give them. Platforms give clicks, calls, form fills, and sometimes they'll even show you booked consults. They do not naturally give you clean attribution to collected fees, clean case type fit, or a reliable retainer sent versus a retainer signed story. So the reporting naturally is going to gravitate towards what's available. And your firm gets managed through proxy numbers. It's not actually a good situation there. The retainer gap gets worse when three operational realities collide head on. First, its intake triage becomes a stress position. It's when your lead volume rises without a matching rise in case fit. So what happens is the intake team starts making fast decisions. They just start screening harder, they screen sloppier, and they simply just get inconsistent. And what happens is you see it in little things. Calls not returned until the next day, web forms that sit, consult scheduling that becomes a game of calendar Tetris. Have you played that one? And follow-up speed that depends on who's at lunch or who called in sick or who just didn't feel like doing their job that day. The second thing that comes up is conflict checks become a hidden bottleneck. I see this in a lot of law firms where the conflict check process is treated like an internal administrative step, not a conversion step. There's a big difference. Because if a prospect is ready to hire and you take 1 day, 2 days, 3 days to clear conflicts, you didn't just slow down operations, you widened the retainer gap. And meanwhile, the vendor report still looks fine because the lead happened. Your bank account, though, does not care that the lead happened. And that's an important thing to remember. The third thing is the consult to client conversion may become personality dependent if you're more than a solo law firm. One partner closes well, another partner educates well, and maybe there's a third partner who's excellent in court, but not decisive in a consult. And if marketing is sending a mixed bag, the consult experience is variable and the retainer gap just becomes your default state. You end up debating lead quality when the real issue in your law firm is that the firm cannot turn a qualified consult into a signed retainer. That's what's happening. And you can feel all of this in a partner meeting, or maybe it's just in your gut, because someone is going to say, we're spending enough. Why does it feel like we're begging for good cases? Or maybe someone is going to say, like, the phones are ringing, intake is just not converting, and 100% intake is going to say it's because we're getting junk leads. And your vendor, well, they're going to just say the numbers are up. And here's the thing. Everyone's technically correct, by the way. It's just that your law firm is stuck. The hidden layer is that lead is not a business event. A signed retainer, that's a business event. Collected fees are a business event. Everything else is a precursor, and precursors are easy, so easy, to overvalue when you're staring at a dashboard. So what do you do with this without turning your firm into like a giant science project, which is the last thing we're trying to do here? I would think start by refusing to argue about marketing in the abstract. Argue about the retainer gap in concrete terms. Not with blame, but with definitions. So do this. In your next internal review, pick a short window of marketing source matters and force a plain language accounting. Things like this. How many marketing source leads became scheduled consults? How many scheduled consults showed up? How many of those consults were a good case fit? How many had a retainer sent? How many became a signed retainer? And I'll tell you, if you cannot answer those questions without hand waving, you don't have a marketing problem yet. You have a measurement problem that is being disguised as an operations problem. And that's something that we need to fix right now. To help you, I'm going to put a checklist down in the description. You should check it out after you finish this video. We've got some other good stuff coming up here. It's meant to help you compare intake volume, consult conversion, and sign retainer count without getting distracted by all the clicks. So make sure you look for that at the end here. So here's the decision rule that I like, and I like it because it's boring and it works. If lead volume is rising, but sign retainer count is flat, treat it as a retainer gap problem, not a traffic problem. That single rule prevents a lot of wasted spend and a lot of unnecessary vendor churn. Now, there's a counterpoint that matters here, and I don't want to ignore it. Sometimes marketing really is the issue. If you are attracting the wrong case types, if your message is generic, if your market is saturated, you can absolutely, without a doubt, buy a lot of attention that never converts. But even then, the way you would diagnose it is still through the retainer gap. I mean, you do not fix it by staring harder at impressions. You fix it actually by seeing where intent dies. So operationally, and this is important, there are a few places intent commonly die in law firms, and you already probably know them if you're being honest with yourself. So the first thing, it dies when follow-up speed is inconsistent. A form comes into your website, and the first human response is hours later. It's definitely going to die when consult scheduling is treated as administrative instead of strategic. And what happens is that the best consult slots, they're just not protected for the best leads. So then it also dies when conflict check process is slow or unclear. What happens is then the PNC feels like they're just waiting in your hallway. It also dies when the consult is long on information and short on the clear next step. So the potential new client leaves with homework instead of a decision. And it definitely dies when the retainer sent versus the retainer signed gap is not owned by anyone. It just becomes a bunch of background noise. So take note what I didn't say there. I didn't say to fix this, you need to be on another social media channel. I didn't say that you need to add more content to your website. And I didn't say go get a new marketing agency. Yeah, sometimes those things are true and you should do them, but they're not first principles. In this case, what we're talking about right now, first principles are, can your law firm move a qualified prospect from first contact to sign retainer without friction that feels disrespectful of the prospect's urgency? And if you answer that question with a no, the retainer gap is just going to eat whatever you spend. I mean, yeah, you can buy more leads and still feel tight. You can rank higher and still have uneven consult calendar. You can even have a great brand that people know and love and lose the momentum when you have prospects that are ready to sign. The practical way to use this is to make your reporting match your economics. So do this. Ask for a view that starts at intake source accuracy and ends at sign retainer count, with the conversion steps all in between those two. If your vendor cannot speak to that, it does not automatically mean they're bad. It actually just means that the reporting is not aligned with how law firms actually make money. That's why we're here. Intentionally, and what I want you to do is treat intake like a revenue function, not a front desk function. Give someone ownership of follow-up speed. Make conflict checks time-bound enough that they do not quietly sabotage conversion. Standardize what a consult must produce, regardless of which attorney is running it. And track the retainer sent versus retainer signed as a metric that gets discussed at every opportunity, not a metric that just gets buried under the rug. And I'll tell you from experience that when you do that, something subtle changes. The conversation stops being, is marketing working? And it actually becomes, where exactly is the retainer gap widening? And what is the smallest operational change that closes it? We've got to stop it from getting larger. And that's a calmer conversation to have, by the way. It's also a more honest one because it respects the reality that your firm is not just a landing page. It's people, calendars, judgment calls, and ultimately timing. So if you're an attorney and you want more of this kind of thinking, I encourage you to like this video and subscribe so you can get more of it. Because the point of all of this is not to become obsessed with metrics. You don't need to do that. The point is to stop letting proxy metrics win arguments they don't deserve to win. Because the retainer gap is not a slogan, it's a lens. And once you see it, you will definitely start noticing how often your law firm is busy in ways that do not cash out, and how often the fix is less about being louder and more about being tighter.